Hello and welcome to Tech Out. My name is Michael, and on today's episode, we'll be looking at customizing React Select. I think we can all agree that React Select is probably the most used select library out there, not just because of its functionality, but because of its beautiful user interface. As we know, the regular select that comes with HTML is not that customizable, and there's a limit to which you can get, except you want to rebuild your own select components. But with React Select, the good thing about it is you get all of the functionalities out of the box. The accessibility is complete, so why not reuse React Select? I think one common issue people stumble across when using React Select is you have a particular use case where maybe you have your designer design something for you to implement, and then you have the select component having so many designs, so many things in between, and you want it to look just like the design. But I mean, with React Select, you already get out of the box design, which might not fit what your company or your clients want. So the idea is to be able to break it down into pieces. I think one beautiful thing about React Select is it allows us to break down components into pieces. In as much as it looks like one really complete select component, you can actually break down every single component that it is made up of. And today the idea is to walk us through that process of being able to customize React Select. We'll start from CSS stylings, and then we'll go into actually rebuilding each of the components that makes up React Select. Looking at the documentation, you can clearly see that it is written here that React Select is a flexible and beautiful select input control for React.js with multi-select, autocomplete, async, and creatable support. So from what you can see here, this gives you so much out of the box. The documentation is also really nice. I've gone over this extensively. It's also very nice. It gives you almost everything you need to implement. But I think one thing it falls short of is, in terms of the custom components, is not the easiest thing to follow. So I think that's what we'll be covering mostly in this tutorial. Going back to the home page, looking at the documentation, this is basically what it takes to set up a React Select component. You first of all install React Select, and you then render the select component, which is exported from the React Select library. So the first thing we'd probably have to do is to create a basic React application, and you can do that by just clicking, by just typing in npx create React app. We could call this React Select tutorial. This might take a while, so we'll come back once this is completed. So once the installation is done, we can now go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup from the starter files. So I'll just delete this. You can also do this from your end. I mean, we could also leave this, but this is just a simple test, and we don't need most of this. And now we leave the app, the CSS app.js, and the other files. We could also leave the web vitals. And the app.js, we can go ahead and clear this and render a hello world. And render a hello world here. Once this is done, you can come here and refresh the page. Okay. Start up your terminal, and then you can do your npm start. And that should spin up a React server for us. Once that is done, you should see hello world on the screen. Now the next thing to do is we can probably take out this class name, and we'll just add a little bit of, I'll clear off the CSS, and I'll add a bit of CSS styles. You don't have to type this out. You can just copy and paste this, or you can even decide to write out your own styles. This is just basic style formatting, just to help us have a really good UI while we are testing. Now, once this is done, I would go ahead and create a new folder. I like to call this components. And here I can just create a custom select. So I can go ahead and create my component itself. Custom select .jsx. Now you can spin up a basic component setup. If you want to achieve this with the arrayfc command, this is the extension that helps you do that, React Native Snippets component. You can also go ahead and type it if you don't want to use that. Now, once this is done, I could also leave this here and then just simply render the component in. We could just render the component in our app.js. Now, when we go to the UI, we'll see the custom selects. The CSS reset has also been applied. If you look closely, you will notice that also. Once this is done, the next important thing is to install the library itself. So we can do this with npm install react select. This might take a while, but once this is completed, we can go ahead and import React selects component. Now this is done, so we can just go here. We can take this down even further. We can go here and then import select from React selects, and then we can simply just render select. Going back to our UI, you see that this is spanning up the entire screen. So I'll quickly just add a class name to this div. This has also been added in the global CSS file, so you just have to add the class name if you're using the same global CSS. Now this helps us have it really small so that we can just go over this cleanly. Now you can see that there's no option here, so on default you have the no option. Now we can simply just create a folder here. I'll call this utils, and now I can create a file data.js. Now this is not compulsory. I think I prefer doing this instead of having it hard-coded in my select components. Now with this, you don't have to have the same value here. You can always have something different. Now the idea is React Select only requires you to have a value and a label. Whatever properties you have in the object is up to you, and it's based on what you are trying to achieve. This could be based on a response you get from an API call. And it's important to know that if you're getting this data from an API call, you have to map over and make sure that it is transformed and it has at least a value and a label. Now once you have this, you can just go ahead and then pass options, and then you pass your fruit option or whatever options you want to pass to it. If I come here now, I can see my options. I can select. That is as easy as it is in setting up React Select. With this alone, I have React Select already set up and ready to use. Now I also like to edit my placeholder and just say please select a fruit. It could be anything you want it to be. This just looks better for me. Now with this done, the first thing we're going to look at is basically adding some styles to override the global CSS. I'm sure you agree with me that this looks really nice already out of the box, but this might actually not fit your use case or what your company wants. So this is where the whole customization starts to make sense. The first thing we'll do is to override the global styles, and then afterwards we can now go ahead and build each component piece by piece. Now I'll just drop a list of components that we are going to override the styles. This is just to help us keep track, since we can't do everything. The idea is just to do a few. Now you can pass the style property and pass select styles to it. Now this could be named anything, but I like to call it select styles, and I also like to have it inside my component. And this will just default to being an empty object. Now, React Select expects this object. Now, inside of this object, you can then override each and every one of these components. We'll probably start with controls, and then we'll move to options, and then for the others, we could just do a simple override. So I can go here and have control. And also, just to add, if you want to know the name of the component to override, I'll probably show that at some point. If you don't want to use the documentation, there's a simple way you can actually know what component you're trying to override the style and what style you're trying to override in particular. Now, this is a function that takes two arguments. The first is the base styles that React Select already applied, and the second is the states. Now, the state is the various states in which the form is, or the control part of the form is at the time you are interacting with this. Now here, all we have to do is return an object. Now, one thing to note is if you return an empty object here, the risk here is you are overriding the entire style React Select has actually applied to this control component. So if I go back to the UI, you would see that there is no style applied here, and you only see please select your fruits. So the recommended thing to do is to spread out the default style, which is the base. Once you spread out the default style, then you can go ahead and override just the way you can override the property in an object in JavaScript. You can then go ahead and override this. You see now our style is back, and we have the same thing we had before. Now, if I come here and add, maybe I like to first add a border radius here. Again, if you want to know the component, the properties to override, I would also show that at some point in the video. I can make this maybe 30 pixels just to show you what it does. You can see now that the edges are curved, and this is the border of 30 pixels applied, but I often like to leave it at 5 pixels because I think it often looks nice at 5 pixels. Now, once this is done, I probably might want to override the border next. Now, when it comes to overriding the border, I think before overriding the border, I also like to override the box shadow. And this is a custom value, so you can actually change this to whatever fits you, and you might actually not see this. It's just a really soft and subtle box shadow. Now, the next thing I like to change the control component is the border. I can see 1 pixel solid red. Now with this, you can see that the border is now red. Now, one thing to also note is React Select gives you various states, which allows you edit components. Now, I'll just do a quick log of this state so that you see what this looks like. States. Now, I have Console Ninja, so this helps me preview my log on the screen. So if you look closely, you see it has value property. This is multi. This is right to left. This is the entire option we pass to this array. So you can, as well as even manipulate this, you could check if maybe the option the value is apple, make the color green. I mean, the idea is just it gives you access to everything, so you can edit this to fit whatever you want to do with it. If I scroll down a bit, so we also have is focused, we have disable is disabled, we have menu is opened. Now you could just go ahead and destructure this and take is focused, and also menu is open. Now I can take off this log. Now I can come here and say if it's focused, then 1 pixel solid red border, it should be applied. So you see now that we don't have a red border, but if I come here and I'm focused on this component, you see that I now have the 1 pixel solid red applied. Now, this might not be needed. This might also be needed. I'll probably just take this off but I'll show you a good use case where I often like to override the border for React Select. You would probably do that now so that you would use it for the other components. So for the custom select property, we could have a parameter for error. Let's say there's an error in your form. You can manually pass this to your custom select. So now I can go ahead and pass a default prop for error and then give it a default value of false. Now if I go to the page and refresh, you see that there's a very subtle border here. But now if I go ahead and toggle this value to become true, you see that the border is now red. You can go ahead and even change the separator, and the drop down component would also get to that. Now the next thing we'll probably look at is the option component. And as usual, it takes the base and the states, and then we can return an object here and then spread out the base. Now once we do this, I'd also toggle this to false, just because we are not dealing with error here. So I think just to mention, the reason why I have important here is we have the states for is focused and menu is open. So all of these are applied when it's basically the styles are changed when it's focused and when the menu is open. So we could actually use the option of if error is true and is focused, and then we apply this style. Maybe I should also do that, and then we take off the importance, because the importance overrides this state. So I'll just take off the importance here, and I'll say if error is true and is focused, say maybe and is focused, and then we can have a red border. So if I refresh here, I'll probably set error to be true. Then I can refresh this page, and then if this is focused, you see that the border is now red. So I think that's one thing to note. And then I can say also on menu is open. So now the red border only applies if the menu is open and it's focused. That's when we have the red border being applied. Now if we move back to options where we were, now one thing we can do for option is we can also change the background. We could change the border radius. We could change anything entirely. You could actually change the font size. So I often like to change the font size to be 14 pixels. Now, let me also show you now how I'm able to know the components I want to edit. Now, if I come here and I inspect on the components, say for example, I inspect on this, one thing you would see clearly is you would see that I have the various components here properly named. So this is the control component, and you see that there's a control, and these are the styles applied to control. Now if there's a style you want to override and it's not working, all you have to do is come here and see all the styles that were passed here. Once you see all the styles that are passed there, all you have to do is come back to your component, override that style, and you'll be fine. If it doesn't work, you add the important flag to ensure that the override feature works properly. I think that's all you have to do. If you're coming down, you see the value container, you see the placeholder, you see the input. You can look at the styles that are applied to them. Then you come here and you create a component for a function for it, and then you override the styles. Now, I'm going to just paste in more styles here, since this is just we're not spending time. Most of what we are doing is for custom components. I'm going to paste in more styles here, just to make this really fast. Now this is for the placeholder, this is for the drop down indicator, this is for single value, and this is for the indicator separator. Now, if I come back here and refresh, because I have an error on the page, which I passed, I now see that I have all of these red, which actually would help you when you are building your app and you are intending to show error. So I'm just going to take this out temporarily just to show you in full what it's supposed to look like when you have an error. This is what the component is supposed to look like when you have an error. Now I'm going to set this back to false. Now with the styles done, we're going to go to the proper feature of the day, which is passing custom components to your React Select. Now it takes a prop which allows you pass various components which can override whatever components they've given to you already. So the first component we'll be looking at will be the option component. Now I think with that we'll be able to move forward to the next component, which will be control, and a few others we'll be able to touch on. With that being said, we already have the components set up for React Select. All we have to do now is create a custom component for the options. So I'll just create my component, and I'll also use my snippet to generate a boilerplate. Now once this is done, what I have to do is to come back to my select component and render this out. Now this expects an object of various components. Now the first of which would be the option component which we created. Now I can easily just go ahead and do this, and this should work because of JavaScript object notation, where you know that if the key value pair is the same name, you could just omit the value pair and it will use the same key and value pair. But we can do this, but the implication of this is just going to render our components. Let me do this so that we can just see how this works. Now we've imported our option component, and then we can go ahead and see this on our browser, how it works. Now, clicking on the drop down, you see that we have option, which is what our boilerplate started with. The option. It's one thing you always want to do is not just pass your option component. I mean, of course, except you just want that to be rendered, most of the times you would also want to pass your own custom prop. I mean, that's the idea of wanting to use a custom component here. So if you want to pass your own custom prop, you have to do this so that you would have access to the default prop that React Select gives you on default, and then you spread this out here. With this, you already have access to the props that comes to React Select on default. Now in our option component, we of course have to destructure this and take out props. I like to do this way because of course there are props that you might want to take out at some point. So it's always best to have it spread out this way, and then whatever you want to take out can come before the props is spread out. Now with this done, the next thing you want to do is to import the components which React Select gives us. Now this is what React Select gives us. So enable us to have access to the custom components we are trying to edit. Now with this, I can now say .option, which is one of the components that is exported here. Now once I do this, all I have to do is come here and spread in these props that I am destructuring. Now I think we have an error on the console. This is because the import here is components and not components. Now with this, I think we should be fine. Now this also returns children, which is of course what we want to render here. Now once this is done, come back to the page, and once you click on the drop down, you now see that you have the exact same thing you had before using the custom component. Now you might want to ask, so what's the point of having a custom component? Well, I mean, that's what we're getting to, and that's where you get to see the beauty of what we are doing. Now currently, if I click on select, I select watermelon, everything works the same way. it was before we did what we did. And the idea was this props we pass here passes both the styling and every other thing that is needed for the functionality to work. Most times I like to log to see. I mean, you could look at the docs, but I also like to log to just give me an idea of everything here. Now, when I hover on this, okay, I'll probably just use the console. Okay. So most times you might want to log. Once you do your log, of course, it's not showing up now because the option component is not into action yet. So once I click on the drop down, the option component has become active. So if I come back here, you see my log. Now if I inspect here, I can then click on the drop down, and then you see so much of everything it gives us. This is the clear value, this is CX, this is usually for styling, this is the data. This is the exact data we passed into React Select that is being rendered. And this is various props you have basically to customize this even further. These are the states we use when we're styling the CSS bit of this. And one thing I would want to point out here is the inner props, because this is usually what controls most of the functionality, the click, the select, and most of the things you see here. Now, so just keep this in mind, but it's always nice to go through this. This is the value here if you need it, and the type is option, which is the component we are currently interfering with. There's also the themes, and then this is also select prop. This is what you can use to actually we have select options, which what you can use to select a particular option. If you see, this is a function that takes in a new value. So with all of this in mind, it tells you there's so much we can do here already with seeing what we have how far we have been able to get. Now, one thing I would also like us to do at this point is, again, like I mentioned, this is not fully a CSS tutorial. So I'm going to bring in some CSS styles. I will just paste it here. You can always just feel free to copy this or recreate the styles. Again, this is not a CSS tutorial, so please don't expect the styling to be perfect. I just had to put up a styling to make it look good while we go through this. Now, these class names are important if you want to use my styles. You would see where they all come into play. Now, with that being done, the next thing we'll probably want to do is, say for example, your designer has a design that maybe you don't want to just select an option, you want to click on an option and then maybe select if the option is confirmed or queried. I mean, that's just a use case. It could be anything, and the idea is being able to manipulate each options and come in between the process of even clicking. That way you can plug in your own handle click function or your click function and then do whatever you want to do when you click. Instead of just selecting an option, you can manipulate this to your liking. So with that, I think what I'll probably try to do for just to help our understanding and implementation is I'll try to implement a situation where if I click on a particular fruit, it lets me know if this fruit is confirmed or if it's queried. The idea is maybe to be sure that the fruit is confirmed. Queried means the fruit, we are not sure of the fruit, but confirmed means we are sure it is part of the list of things we want to select. So I'll just have that demo to maybe help us have an understanding of how we can manipulate React Select option components. Now, with that being said, the first thing we'd want to do is to come back to the custom select and create a state here. So I can say const show status, set show status, and this will be equal to use states. And then I can set this to null initially. And then, of course, I would want to pass this as props, which was the idea of destructuring the props here so that we can plug into this and pass our own props as we need. Now, once this is done, if I go to my custom option component, I can just come here and destructure this. Now with this done, if I try to log show status and set show, and let's just log show status, maybe it gives us, and then I click on the drop down, coming back here, you see that it is null, which is an active prop. So it tells you that we are getting the props that was passed. Now, once we have the show status, we can do many things with this now. Now, the first thing we want to do is create a div, and then here we can have 2 more divs. I can give this a class name of option wrapper. If you come back to the CSS styles we added, this is a valid class, option wrapper. So passing the class of option wrapper, and here we can just return the children. Now with this, we can say custom. Now when I do this, going back to the UI, if I click on the drop down, you see that we have apple custom, banana custom, and this is added. So you can already see what we can do with this. Now, what I would want to do next is build up this custom component. Now, something I can do to render this out optionally, I can say if show status is equal to props.value, so this is 3, not 2, is equal to prop.value, then of course show custom. If this is equal to prop.value, then show the custom components we have. I mean, we could destructure value here. That should still work perfectly. So we just say if is equal to value, and then we show custom. Now with this done, we can give this a class name. I think this should be the last class name we have here, which is for option wrapper button component. And then here we can return 2 button components with this carrying queried and this carrying confirmed. So going back to the UI, we can see that we can't see that yet because of the condition we have. So moving forward. Okay, so now we want to add a click to the parent div. And I'll call this handle show status as my handler function, and then I can come here and create this const. It's equal to this, and then with this we have our handler function set out. So we could just do a quick check if the value is equal to show status, then set show status to be equal to null, and then else we can set show status to be equal to the value. Now the idea of what we are trying to achieve here is we want a situation where you click on an option, it sets the active status to be on that option you clicked, but then we only want one option at a time to show the queried and the confirmed button. So with that in mind, we would want to show null if it's already more like this is basically like a toggle. If it has already been selected, then toggle it off. If it's not been selected, then of course select it. Now, if we come back to the UI, you can already see that this is building up fine. So if I click on Apple, sorry, I'll do that again. If I click on, okay, so currently the problem we have now is if you click on a particular option, of course it selects, but what it does is it also selects that value and adds it to the selected items for React Select. Now what we want to do is to stop that behavior. Basically on click, we don't want to select a particular item. Now with this, if you remember when we're looking at the props value, we had the inner props being passed inside the prop component. This is what handles the click functionality, and all we have to do is to stop that click functionality from actually happening. So we can come here and destructure inner props. with that being destructured, we can come here and also pass inner props. Now note that inner props is already passed here, but the fact that we are also passing it separately overrides what is here already. Now with this, it expects an object. Now all we have to do is to pass the inner props we destructured already, and then we also override the onClick functionality here, and then we can just pass an empty handler. I think this should be enough to override the click functionality. And I mean, this is how simple it is to override a particular functionality with React Select. You can basically do anything you want with it. Now with that being done, I come back here and I click on banana. You see that banana is the one active. I click on apple, apple is the one active. If I click on queried, let me refresh this so that orange is not selected on default. Now if I click on banana, banana is the one active. If I click on orange, if I click on kiwi, if I click on strawberry, now you can then select if strawberry is queried or confirmed. Then when I click on if it's queried or confirmed, that is only when the option is actually selected. And then on the control component, we'll have sort of a feedback to show if the option selected was queried or confirmed. Now for this one, we can just pass in a handle click, and then come here and recreate the handle click. And this should take an event, and all we just have to do is to prevent the default actions. Now with this, we have successfully prevented all default actions that are possible when you click on this on-click handler. When you click on a particular option, now we can then add an on-click to these buttons. Now with this, I can also copy this and add to the second button. Now what we want to do is when a particular option is selected, we want to ensure that the option that is selected is what is going to be added or selected as React Select on click function is supposed to do here. Now the idea is, if you look at what the prop also gives us, you see that it gives us a select option prop. Now we just have to destructure that select option prop. Now with that done, the select option function, we'll just call it here, expects an object, which is the new value we are trying to select. So I can just pass an object here and spread out the value we have. And then when I do this, I can then override this confirmed prop to become, for queried, it becomes false. And then we could just copy this out and replace it here. We could just copy function and replace it here, and here it becomes true. Now the idea here now is when you click on a particular button, it triggers a select for React Select as though you clicked the natural on-click that comes with it. Now just to see how this works, if I come here and click on an option, grape, I see queried, I see confirmed. If I click on banana, I see queried, I see confirmed. If I click on confirmed, it's supposed to select banana. Now what we have to do is to spread out the data that comes from React Select. We can also destructure that here. It passes us the data, which is the current option that is being clicked. Now with that data, we can also then override it and say is confirmed. Can then be false for queried, and then we just have to copy this out and take it back to confirmed, and then is confirmed becomes true. Now coming back to the UI, if I come here and click on grape, I see the option to select queried or confirmed. If I click on confirmed, it selects grape. If I come here and click on another option, Apple, queried or confirmed, queried, you select Apple. Now to see the beauty of this, one thing I want us to add is make this select component a multi-select, which is very simple by just adding a multi-select prop, and this on default is true. Now with this done, it's already a multi-select. Now once you go back to the UI, you see that Apple has been selected. We'll come back and pick orange, confirmed. You can come back and pick strawberry, queried. Now why I'm doing this way is so that when we eventually manipulate this control components, we can now see whether it's queried or it's confirmed alongside the option that was selected. Now the next component we'll probably want to add would be the multi-label value. The multi-value label, which is, let me just show that, this label you see here. Now again, everything is editable down to the this remove button you see here. This is actually called the multi-value remove. So there's a component for everything. This is also a component. You can edit this component. This is a divider. You can edit this component. This is a drop down indicator. You can edit this component. You can actually edit everything here. That's how flexible it is with just one component for everything on the right hand side. Now to edit the multi-value label, just to enable us show the confirmed status we added, what we'll quickly just do is we'll just come here and create a component just the same way. Now, as usual, spin up a boilerplate, and then I can easily export this and come to my custom component and then render this out. Now, like I mentioned, if you're not passing a prop, you might just want to leave it this way, and then this also works. Now, with this done, we have already replaced the label. So you see now it's already reading multi-value label. Like I mentioned, this is multi-value remove, so you can actually edit this also. And even if you want to, you can remove the button. You can edit the both of them as a single component also, but we'll just go for the label here. Now, with that done, all we have to do is come back here and, as usual, destructure your props, which will be passed automatically. And I can also take my data out of this. Now we want to import components from React Select. And as always, we want to render components dots. So this is multi-value label. So this is the multi-value container. This is for both the label and the button. This is the multi-value label for just the label alone, and this is the multi-value remove. So we're going for the multi-value label. And with this, if you come back, you will see that we still have the same thing, of course, because it's the value that is just the label we are editing. So of course, the multi-value label is still what will be read here. Now here, we simply want to return a div, and I can give this a class name. I'll probably just say a div.multi-value label. Multi-value, I'm going to add label to this. Now, once this is done, coming here, I can then render a p tag and say data.label, which is the label basically of the component you selected. Don't forget that we have 3 properties. I'll probably just log that out to also show that. Once again, the extension I'm using to show my log here is the Console Ninja extension. I think I can just quickly show that this is the Console Ninja extension. Now, once I hover on this, you see that we also have the same values we passed across from the options component, which is the value, the label, and also is confirmed prop. Now all I have to do now is maybe render a small tag and say if data dot is confirmed, because of course it's always returned If data dot is confirmed, then I can render an emoji here. I think in Mac this is Control Command space bar. I'm not sure what it is for Windows. So if it's queried, I can also show this. I think with this we would already have outputs. So you can already see that we have grape and we have the X icon. But of course, we would want to make this look better. So next we want to render a span tag. And then we want to render maybe a small tag here. And then we can use the logic here and say if data dot is confirmed. If data dot is confirmed, we can render a span and say confirmed. Else we can render a span and say queried. Now with this I can also add a class name here and say confirmed, and I can also add a class name here and say queried. Now again, I mentioned some of the CSS, please bear with me, you might have to just copy it. So I already have some CSS added here, so you can just copy this into your code, or you can also decide to style your own CSS. Now with this done, if we go back to the UI and then click on selecting an option, maybe this is grape and we are sure that grape is on the list, so it is confirmed. You see that it has a confirmed tag. If we also want mango and we are not sure, mango is queried, we have mango with the query tag. Now again, this is just a simple example of what we can do with the custom components in React Select, but I bet you this is not limited. You can do anything you want with this. So imagine you have your designs, your designer wants you to implement so many things. Instead of building your own select component, React Select is really accessible and it covers all edge and features. So I think it would be really nice if you already have React Select and you just want to customize it to fit what you want. Again, like I mentioned, this button is a multi-label remove. You can also remove multi-value remove. You can also edit it, you can remove it, or you can decide to edit the multi-value container itself. This is also a component. You can even decide to pass null to certain components here. Let me give you an example. If I come here and pass a multi-value remove and I return null here, what it does is, coming back here, you see that there's no longer a remove button, so this cannot be removed. Now if you are working with the multi-value container, you would also have access to the function that removes it, so you can then plug in and say maybe when you click on query you want to remove it, or if you don't want it to be removable at all. I mean, you can go as far as doing whatever you want with this. And also I think one good thing here is you can also avoid passing in the global styles, which was the initial thing we did for React Select, and then focus on styling your own custom components where it matters. So I think with that, we've covered we've covered 3 custom components, and trust me, it's the same pattern, so there's no point repeating this. It's the same pattern regardless of the components you want to customize. If you're customizing the drop down or the select. Now, how do I know what components are customizable? I'll probably say every component is customizable, but just so that you didn't hear it just from my mouth, I'll probably go back to the documentation. These are all the components that you can customize with React Select. With that being said, that would be it for React Select. Of course, my eyes will be on the comment section. If you have comments, if you have suggestions, I would always be glad to learn from you. And even if you have topics you want me to touch on, that's also fine. I can also look at that on the comment section. Please help share this video, help like, and I hope it's been impactful. And with that being said, Don't forget that tech is a journey, and the idea is to take steps every day to becoming better.